I know two girls that I just adore. I'm so happy I can see them more.
Next on Newsmax Prime, while his running mate sings his praises, the former speaker sounds a sour note about Ted Cruz, and the candidate responds. Then, the Cruz-Carly combination may have seized the national spotlight, but in Indiana, Donald Trump found a knight, not in shining armor, but in crimson and cream, and that may have more of an impact on Hoosier voters. Plus, who's your biggest worldwide worry? Terror groups probably take the top spot, but two nation states are not our friends. The threats from Russia and China, and why it is right to be wary. Newsmax Prime starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, naming rights and presidential politics. After naming Carly Fiorina as his running mate, Ted Cruz is called a not-so-nice name by the former Speaker of the House. Meantime, a mighty big name in the Hoosier state states his support for Donald Trump. Miranda Kahn has more.
JD, John Boehner grew up next door to Indiana in Ohio, but as the Hoosier state prepares for next Tuesday's Republican primary, it's a sure bet that Ted Cruz doesn't feel neighborly about the former House Speaker. That's because Boehner blasted Cruz in comments to an audience at Stanford University last night. Speaking of the Texas senator, the ex-speaker said, quote, "Lucifer in the flesh. I have Democrat friends and Republican friends, but I have never worked with a more miserable SOB in my life," end quote. In response, the Texas senator took aim, not so much at Boehner, but instead at the GOP frontrunner. Ted Cruz responded to former Speaker Boehner's comments earlier today while at a news conference before a rally in Indiana.
He allowed his inner Trump to come out. You know, I will say this, if you're wondering who actually has stood up to Washington, I think John Boehner has made it crystal clear. So if you want someone that's a texting and golfing buddy, if you're happy with John Boehner as Speaker of the House and you want a president like John Boehner, Donald Trump's your man.
But Donald Trump is the man for a famous Hoosier. Former Indiana basketball coach Bobby Knight is appearing with the frontrunner on the campaign trail.
You folks are taking a look at the most prepared man in history to step in as President of the United States.
High praise from Coach Knight, who won 3 national championships with the Hoosiers, and Mr. Trump hopes it will put him in the winner's circle come next Tuesday night. JD, back to you.
Thanks, Miranda. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined now by syndicated radio talk show host Steve Deace, Skyping in tonight from Iowa. Steve is also the author of a great new book entitled A Nefarious Plot. And joining us from Newsmax Washington, chief political correspondent for the USA Radio Network's Scottie Nell Hughes. Thanks to you both for your time tonight on Newsmax Prime. We should state for the record, Steve is a strong supporter of Ted Cruz, Scottie Nell big for Donald Trump. And Steve, first to you. John Boehner, with his comments concerning Ted Cruz, that story rose to the top of the news cycle earlier today. Are you surprised the former speaker using language about your favorite candidate?
JD, what really surprised me was John Boehner claiming he had friends. Do you know these people? I don't know any of these people. You know,
well, there's some of them on K Street I'm fairly familiar with.
Yeah, I was just going to say, since I don't live there, I don't know those people. I don't know the circles that John Boehner and Trump roll around in when they're texting each other sweet establishment nothings in their ears on the golf course in between rounds of 18. So that aside, this is manna from heaven for the Cruz campaign. I mean, the polls are trending well in Indiana. It's a statistical tie according to today. 538 blog gives Cruz about 60% odds of winning the state. And now you're telling me that the last few days of the campaign, the establishment gives us a coveted endorsement that, hey, this is the guy we really hate. This is the guy we know is the real threat, not Donald Trump, who's our buddy. I could not have scripted this any better. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to get out of the way and let John Boehner keep talking.
All right, Scottie Nell, you hear Steve right there. He says it's not a nefarious plot. It's pretty good news for the Cruz campaign. What about the attack that the senator used today, saying Boehner is channeling his inner Donald Trump?
Well, it's first of all, it's inappropriate and it's really irrelevant what John Boehner said about Ted Cruz. I do agree with Steve on this point. It was manna from heaven, and by golly, they need some good news as they've been on a track record of losing and bad news lately. However, I also think it was very inappropriate that he sits there and links it to Donald Trump when Mr. Trump had nothing to do with this. And while Boehner is irrelevant, guess who is? Lindsey Graham. You cannot get more establishment right now than Lindsey Graham or John McCain, who have both expressed their appeal right now for Ted Cruz. So if you want to talk about establishment and who's the more establishment candidate, you have seen people like Jeb Bush, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, all of those that us conservatives, us principled conservatives do not like, line up behind Senator Ted Cruz. So don't sit there and try to put that establishment mark onto Mr. Trump, because guess what? The people know better, and the people are lining up behind the person that's exact opposite of the establishment, which would be Mr. Trump.
Wow, this is turning into the longest word in the language, anti-disestablishmentarianism. Now let's go to what's really been sparking and buzzing amidst social media, and that, of course, was yesterday's announcement. Not so much the selection of Carly Fiorina, but Carly crooning to the two daughters of Ted Cruz. Let's listen to her song stylings again.
I'm so happy I can see them more. 'Cause we travel on the bus all day. We get to play. We get to play. I won't bore you with any more of the song.
Now, for the record, I think Carly has a pretty good voice, but why, Scottie Nell, do I get the impression this is going to show up in one of those Trump Twitter ads sometime soon?
If it hasn't already, but more importantly, it was creepy. It was absolutely creepy. And the poor children that have to subject themselves, and knowing that there's 4 more verses to that, please save it for The Voice. Maybe she might have a better chance of auditioning for that than running for president, as her campaign failed and she came in 7th place in Iowa.
Whoa, Scottie Nell, you are just ripping her apart for a little song. I mean, what are you inclined to say, Steve? Hey, lighten up.
I don't know. Let's look at that. Let's look at the word creepy for a minute. You know, do you think creepy might be commenting on Megyn Kelly's menstrual cycle? You think creepy might be, boy, my daughter's got a great figure. If she wasn't my daughter, I'd probably be dating her, and saying that on national television? Having people sing songs to you? It's like we heard Obama in 2008. I mean, we can sit here and talk creepy all day long. I don't think creepy is a can of worms the Trump cult probably wants to open up. They've got the market cornered on that one, JD.
Scottie Nell, you got a response to that?
Not so much, but also Prince, who we just lost these past weeks, also wrote a song to Mr. Trump as well. Because a lot of people of diverse backgrounds actually appreciate and respect Mr. Trump. But when you're sitting there in a campaign stage and you're announcing your vice president candidate when there's no pathway to actually winning the presidency by the people's vote, it is very creepy when you break out into song, and that song's probably already been made into a ringtone, and at the very least, maybe an opening for Saturday Night Live.
Well, let's get back to Steve. Steve, you wanted to say something in response.
Yeah, JD, you've been around for a long time. What do you think about people calling him Mr. Trump? Does that not sound creepy? That's like Jehovah's Witness-like stuff. I mean, what is Mr. Trump? Who talks like that? Who refers to
It's called respect, just like I call Senator Cruz Senator Cruz.
He is an employee running for a job. He's not Mr. Trump. He's just another guy. What, I mean, who elevates a political candidate like that? It's freaking creepy. Mr. Trump. I mean, even putting that in your casual language. I mean, it's creepy. That's pretty creepy.
Well, okay,
but like behavior.
Hey, Steve, breathe. Please breathe. 1, 2, 3. Breathe with me here and realize.
Hey, Scottie, do you tell Donald Trump to breathe when he's having his daily meltdowns? I'm sorry, Mr. Trump. You tell Mr. Trump
it's okay,
like
Steve.
Let me move.
Are you busy saying hamina?
Let me move this.
Yes, Mr. Trump. What do you need me to say, Mr. Trump?
Let me move this discussion along, and I'll call him the Donald. And he had pretty good success earlier this week with wealthy, well-educated voters in those 5 primaries back east, a demographic that Trump had struggled with in the past. Why the change, Scottie Nell?
Well, first of all, Mr. Trump did very well with every diversity, whether you're talking about every different demographic, and even including the evangelicals, who he continues to overwhelmingly win. And so I don't think there's much of a change in anything with him. But, well, yeah, it's called the South. You know, that area that Ted Cruz has not won, since he's only won 2 states east of the Mississippi River, the heavy evangelical areas, yeah, those are dominated by Mr. Trump when it comes to popular vote. Maybe not to, taking delegates, but when it comes to what the people want, those people are choosing Mr. Trump. And so I don't think there's been a change in his messaging, because it's obviously been working as he continues to win in the popular vote and the delegate count.
For delegates. That's what they do. They vote for delegates. That's why we're all focused on.
No, they don't. There's the delegates he's winning. Then there's appointed delegates, and it's the appointed delegates by politicians and establishment. They're overwhelmingly going for Senator Cruz magically.
You mean like the delegates that he's won all over the country that were all elected by people? You mean like that?
No, they were not elected. They were appointed.
JD, why do all you networks have all these Trump people on to lie like this all the time? Why do you guys all do it?
Now, wait a minute. We bring on
in the process.
Steve.
Why do you all do it? Why don't you correct them? Why do you let them do a disservice to the Republic like this?
Because you have a chance right here. You're speaking.
Sick of it.
You're
They're
making
sitting
the
at
point.
home yelling at their television set that they're letting a guy that's gotten 3% of the total population's vote so far just run roughshod and drop a deuce on our constitutional republic. They're sick of it. Why don't you guys ever call him on it? Why don't you ever fact check him? Why don't you just let him come on over and over again and just repeat the same exact line,
Steve,
like a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses? Hey, I'm waiting for Scottie to be in an airport saying, hey, if you died tomorrow, you sure you'd go to Valhalla? Here's a copy of Art of the Deal. It's a cult. They lie. Please call him on it. Thank you. I'm done.
Here's what we try to do, Steve, and I think you can appreciate this as a broadcaster and perhaps as an advocate. Obviously, you are an impassioned advocate for Senator Cruz. That's why we bring you on.
Truth. These people lie a lot, JD, and you know it too. They're lying through their teeth all the time, and it's not funny. The future of the country's at stake. That's all. Western civilization at stake, and they lie daily. It's not funny. It's not a joke. The only joke's on our kids and the future generations of this country. This isn't a freaking reality show. It's an election for the leader of the free world.
Okay, Scottie Nell Hughes, final 30 seconds for your last word.
Well, this is the emotion, the passion that we're getting right now is coming from people like Steve. And unfortunately, we are going to have to find a way to unify that going into the general, or we will really have a problem in our hands called Hillary Clinton and the presidency. I state the truth. I state the facts. There are delegates that are going to Ted Cruz that are being appointed by the state parties. They're not being elected by the people. Those are not the things that we have a question about. But unfortunately, JD, we're going to have to find some sort of common ground if we really want to fight who the true enemy is. It's not on the Republican side. It's on the Democrat side. And it's sad to see passions like that.
We will have to leave it there. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Steve Deace, author of the new book, A Nefarious Plot, and Scottie Nell Hughes, checking in from Newsmax, Washington. Lots more after this.